Okay.
Okay.
You can begin.
Yeah, my name is Joseph Giles. I live in Mechanicsville, Virginia now. That's in Hanover County. I was born and raised in Hanover County. I grew up in a little place called Beaver Dam, Virginia. Beaver Dam. That's in Hanover County, western part of the county. I started school in 1940-41. At that time, it was the first year that the buses were running in Hanover County. All of my sisters and brothers before me, they had to walk to school. Our house from where we lived to the elementary school that we attended was about 4 miles. So they'd walk every day back and forth to school. There wasn't any buses at all to transport them back and forth to school. The school we went to was a four-room school out in Hanover County, and it was at Bethany Elementary School. It was a church. Our church was across the road from the school, which was Bethany Baptist Church. The school name was Bethany Elementary School. Once you finished the 7th grade there, then we had to travel another 15 miles to Ashland to a high school. It was a high school in Beaver Dam where we lived there. But at that time, we could not go to the high school in Beaver Dam. So we had to travel to Ashland, Virginia. That's where the Hanover County Training School was. And that's where we started the high school. If you didn't have some way of getting to high school at that time, that was it. 7th grade was the last year we go because most of us lived on farms. We didn't have a transportation. So if you didn't, once you finished elementary.
Once you get from 7th grade.
Once you finish the 7th grade, that's where most of the kids are prior to me and long but my age, prior to me really, that's where they stopped at. Now if you had relatives who lived in Ashland or lived in Richmond, then you would go and live with them and finish high school. But a lot of the kids just didn't have relatives who lived away like that. Some of the people in the area, the children parent, they had cars, and so they would their dad would give the oldest boy, the oldest daughter, well the most time was the boy, the car. He'd pick up other children, take them to high school. But that was a very rare thing. So really, once you finish the 7th grade, that was it. In the elementary school that I went to, of course, a four-room school. You start with the primer, call it the primer, and had 2 grades in each. It has a 4-room, so it was 2 classes in each room. The primer in 1st, 2nd and 3rd, 4th and 5th, 6th and 7th in the class. The big boys that was in the 7th grade, they had to kind of almost be there during the winter time, get the wood, get the coal, stoke the heaters up. Because we had to be janitors and also we had to be students. So we had to get the coal and stuff and start the fires, keep the fire going to school for the teachers. I guess that's basically we had some good years. We had a lot of hand-me-down. Most of our books and everything, we said, what's hand-me-down? We didn't get any new books. You get the second-hand books that came from the white school to us. And of course, also the furniture in our school was coming from the white school to our school. And then after that, you went on to the high school, of course. And the high school, which was Hanover County Training School, it was another building that the white kids had. They pulled the building down and brought it to us and built it for the Hanover County Training School. So that's the school we had to go to until 1952. And that's when they built a new high school in Ashland, Virginia. 1968, that's when they integrated the school, in 1968. And then, of course, they changed the high school that we was going to the Hanover County School Board office on one side, and on the other side, it was the high school, it was the elementary school. And at the present time, it's still the elementary school and the Hanover County School Board office.
What about for your children? Do you, did they go through Hanover County schools?
All of them, yeah, we got two girls. They went through Hanover County School. Of course, they came along at a good time after 1968, so they could go to any school they wanted to. But you know, you go to the one in your area, of course, and in the high school you want to go to. They didn't have the same problem that I had. They had buses to pick them up and take them to school and bring them back, each day. My wife was fortunate enough. She taught in the county for quite a few years. And in fact, she retired from Hanover County Training School, Patrick Henry High School in Ashland, Virginia. That's where she retired from. She was a Spanish teacher there and English teacher there. She retired in 1994.
Was desegregation any troubles with trying to integrate the schools?
The first few, it wasn't a whole lot of trouble. It was kind of some very tense moments during that first year when they integrated the school. I don't recall any trouble they really had, but it was some really tense moments there because it wasn't like what we hear in other places where they'd bring in the policemen, the National Guard, and they was fighting and all that stuff. We didn't quite have that, but it was some pretty tense moments. I mean, they made some remarks and stuff like that, but nothing to the point that you had to call in the law enforcement to settle the problem.
Did you have any friends or any relatives that went to integrated schools, and did they share any differences from compared to when you were in school?
Oh yeah, it was much different, much different.
What was it like?
Well, they liked it, I guess. The ones who came on behind me, they liked it better because they had more opportunities in one way, and the other way was bad because a lot of things that we had in the segregated school, when they got to the integrated school, they didn't have that.
Some things like
well,
what?
I mean, like most time in the high school, now you first time you see a black valedictorian, salutatorian, most times white. We used to have all kind of clubs and things in the black schools. We don't have them now. I mean, look at this. You know, I don't. It's just different. It's not the same as it was then. I think we lost a lot. We gained some, but I think the whole thing we lost by integrating the schools. I really do. From what I've learned from the children that go to school now. But very soon you're talking in these high schools of valedictorian now, that's black or salutatorian. Most times they're white. You know, so I don't know whether some strings are pulled there so our kids don't get those grades and get to that point. I don't know, but you don't see that. I'm not in Hanover County.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Okay,
Bless you. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Hill. I'm from Wings, Virginia. I graduated high school in 1958. My earliest memories of high school was that it was a segregated school. Our classes were from grade 1 through grade 12. I went to one school my entire life. I remember being in the first grade with a teacher who also taught the second and third grade. I remember that we went from first grade to high first, and then from high first to second. I remember being in third grade that this teacher also taught the third, fourth, and fifth grade. So my early childhood was spent with one teacher in multiple grades. When I went out for athletics, I recall that we didn't have an indoor gym, so we played basketball on an outdoor court. It was dirt. You had to allow for the Kentucky wind issue when you shot because the wind would affect the flight of the ball. We had just mediocre basketball team, but we had some great baseball teams because back in the day, everyone wanted to be like Jackie Robinson, so everybody went out and played hard. We didn't have a football team because we didn't have any equipment. The one year they decided to give us some equipment, it was the leftover equipment from the white school in town that was all ratted and used up, and they gave it to us, and of course it was not proper for us to use. I remember that our books were third, fourth, and fifth edition of the same books. It got to the point where your older brother and sister would pass the book down to you, then you would use it, and you'd pass it down to another member of your family. And there's one book I recall that went through 5 of us. Our older sister's name was in it, then my name ended up being in it, then 2 years later my younger sister's name was in it. So you can see that the information was not updated because it was about the 5th or 6th edition of that book. I remember that we didn't have any indoor plumbing facilities, so that we had to go outside to use the bathroom facilities. We had wood stove for heat, and after recess, the young men had to bring in wood to come back into the class. I remember that it was just kind of hard as far as going to school because we walked to school my entire 12 years of school, and it was difficult because you would see white kids in buses riding by you going to another school that had much better facilities. So even with that, I pride myself on how much a teacher was able to accomplish with just very, very little and meager resources. The teachers were hard taskmasters. They made sure that you would do your lesson. They'd crack your hands or your knuckles if you didn't obey. So all in all, when I look back on my 12 years in school, I look back on it with fond memories, because even though I didn't have the best of everything, the teachers gave us the best of everything that they had. So they were able to instill in us the hard work ethics, having good character. They were able to instill in us the idea that we had to work hard to get what we wanted, and that we had an obligation to reach back and bring someone else up. Now all this is entirely different from my kids of today. I have 3 grown adults, children. They all went into the military. I have 3 adult grandchildren who are still in college. 2 of them are juniors in college and 1 is in grad school. And I have 2 little ones, one in 8 and 11. But now they're in integrated schools. They have locker rooms and have dining facilities and have laboratories. I remember that we didn't even have a library. Our library doubled as a classroom. We didn't have a science lab. The science lab doubled as a classroom. So it's just entirely different. But you know, when you look back on life, you kind of get out of life what you put into it. And if you're willing to work hard and really put your nose to the grindstone, as they say, there's no telling what you can accomplish, no matter what your meager beginnings were. It's not where you come from, it's where you're going to go, and how much pride you have in yourself to excel and do the best that you can.
Amen. Thank you.
This was on the NAACP. That's what was on the NAACP. Oh, okay. I get it. It's going to be either or. I don't think we'll.
My name is Tony Milner, and I'm from Martinsville, and I'm a bail bondsman. And this young lady, she was actually, we were talking about desegregation, and I was telling her about the incident that happened then in Prince Edward County. How the white folks, during that time, they closed down the whole school system and started a private school system. And the city council, or the county government, gave the parents backdoor money. Like they went to the back door of the bank or the back door where it was, and they gave them money so they could pay the fees for the private school. And then, of course, the government got into it and made them shut it all down. And one long after that, before they desegregated all the schools. And now, I know every time I pass through there, you know, coming down to Richmond or going down on the coast west to where I be going, I see Prince Edward County. I always think about how those white folks, they just shut the school system down just so to keep Afro-American kids from going to those schools and mingling with the white folks, like some of our color gonna get on. But anyway, that's just about the gist of it. And I know I had one attorney named, I can't think of his name right now, but he was very instrumental in that fight. I can't remember the name. I know he worked for lawyer Robert Williams.
Well.
Okay, you said.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, my name is Brenda Jackson Artwood, and I live in Waynesboro, Virginia, and I went to school in Charlottesville. Back in 67, 68, we went through the segregation, integration, and we were uprooted from our school of comfort and bused to a school that did not want us there, and of course we were ostracized and picked on and just called everything, taunted. I mean, and we were forced there. We didn't want to be there. They didn't want us there, but we had to get along. So daily, during this same thing, busing, and of course riding the bus back then, you either had to stand up because they didn't want you sitting beside them, and it was a sad thing, you know, and this went on, and of course it hurt. We didn't get any counseling. I mean, this was, you either come in and do what you've got to do and be okay, or, you know, the thing was we had to, and it was no other choice. So, but it's hurtful today when we have had a reunion with some of our black students that were back in the day, back in the 67, 68, back when we were forced there. And we still have the story to tell today of how we were treated and how unfair everything was. But we got through it. But we look back, and for the kids for today, they've got it all, but still, it's some still hidden agendas that, you know, undercurrents of things that are being done and said that it's still not equal. Mm-hmm. It's still not equal. I don't feel it is because, you know, there's still so much hidden racism, just doing little things, you know, little things that are done that, you know, I come from back in the old school, so I know it's still there. But I just, you know, I guess what I would say right now for back in the day when we had to be forced to go to a place we didn't really want to, we made it. But it's still some hurt there. I mean, it's just like you were stripped, and this is what happened to you. I mean, so we have. I feel like my ancestors back when they were forced here against their will. So that doesn't go away. It'll always be a part of our daily life. But my thing is, it happened to us, and we couldn't change what happened, but we can always remember what happened. So that is something that will always live, that we will never forget. But I thank God that I made it. I hope that this will be a help to you.
Amen. Yes, thank you. Wonderful.
We did dress rehearsal, and of course we had to put money out to get fabric to make our costumes. And we did, I mean, you know, the production, it was like a 6-week play, so everybody had their part. And during rehearsal time, we all gathered on the auditorium, on the stage to do our part, and it was a musical, so we were holding hands. But I turned around, and it was just my cousin and I, and the white counterparts. They didn't want to hold their hands. So I raised my hand to say, well, why aren't we getting our hands held? And don't you know that teachers said, well, we don't all just drop hands. Nobody hold hands. They didn't want to address that. And that just made us not want it. We weren't wanted there. So
that's why I don't go to my high school reunion.
yeah, you know, I can't, you know. It was really, that's sad. But now, for my principal, he was a good man, you know. He welcomed everybody, and he could know our names, but you had those teachers who didn't want us there, but you'll never forget that. So all of the things that we could have been in, we were denied because we coming in on them. They didn't want us there. We didn't want to be there, but we participated in stuff. Mm-hmm. And just because we wanted to be part of a play. And it just bothered me. I still think about that.
No, this is it. This is it. This is it.
nice. That was
I know.
You have black teachers.
We did have black teachers there, only a few, but you could go talk with them. But the whole thing, though, was for some of the white teachers that were so strong in control of not really wanting us there, was such a big part of keeping it segregated. And because you wanted to be in a committee or on a committee, you were overlooked. You raised your hand, you were overlooked. And like I said, with the play, it was a musical play, and we were bold enough. And of course, we didn't see racism, but they saw us as we were different, and so we just wanted to be part of the play. And so when the way they were acting, and I'm thinking, because we didn't know that, that wasn't the way we were taught. And so when we were denied, when they didn't want to hold our hands, and I thought right then and there, they don't want us here. All right, so we've already paid for our costumes, so that's money we didn't have to throw away, but we couldn't stay there because we knew right now that we're not going to be part of this play because they didn't want us there. And that thing is really, it's hurtful.
Now, have you ever been able to go back to the high school?
Haven't been back. Have not been back.
And no reunions or anything?
And no, we have not. And there's a few of us that had gone there. We reunited outside of the main reunions with the high school, but have no desire to go back. And that's sad. It should be that we should be able to come together, but why should we have a reunion? We weren't welcome. So, but the principal there was a really good man, so, and I don't think I ever told him what actually went on during that play, and I'm sure that would have been upsetting to him, but that was what we had to deal with. But like I said, back then we didn't have counseling and stuff, so you were pretty much on your own. They didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't want us there. We didn't want to be there, so we were forced in, and that was just the way it was.
Where are you from?
Hi, my name is Edwin B. Henderson II. I'm from Falls Church, Virginia. And to support your project here, there was a Falls Church colored school that my grandmother, Mary Ellen Henderson, was the principal and teacher there, along with Lola Saunders. Opened, well, it actually opened in 1887, but they closed it during World War I, and they asked my grandmother to open it back up in 1919. And she taught there for 30 years. But she was very active with the NAACP in trying to get better facilities and educational opportunities for African Americans in Fairfax County. And she would go, they would raise money, and they would go to the school board and ask for a new school, because a lot of students would move into that area because of the level of education that she was providing. Well, after about 20 years, she took the 1935 school budget and did a disparity study rather than begging, the school system for money. She did a disparity study, which took the 1935 Fairfax County public school budget and differentiated about how much money was spent to educate white students versus how much was used to educate African American students. And the findings were shocking. 97.4 cents out of every dollar was used to educate white students, and only 2.6 cents out of every dollar was used to educate black students. And with that study...
White students, 2 point?
Yeah.
Okay, my goodness, black students.
And so she used this study and formed a interracial group along with many whites as well in the Washington, D.C. community to
Well,
And the new school was the James Lee Elementary School in Falls Church, Virginia, which was the first school in Fairfax County that was made out of bricks. Had a classroom for each grade level, had an auditorium, and inside bathrooms, because the old school had outside outhouses, had no running water, had a potbelly stove in the middle of the room, you know, and that was the old thing. But the white students, many years before that, had their brick schools and everything. And so in Falls Church, Virginia, in 2004, they decided to build a new middle school. And they made the big mistake of putting me on the naming committee, and so that new school in Falls Church is named the Mary Ellen Henderson Middle School.
Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Suetta Freeman. I was Suetta Dean. I am from Front Royal, Virginia. I was one of the 21 that integrated the high school at Warren County back in the year of, the schools were closed in 1958. The schools officially opened in 1959. When the schools opened up in 59, there were only 21 students that occupied the schools, and they gave us the best education that they could with the teachers. The teachers were actually teaching out of their profession, but still we went to school. When the schools opened up in the fall of 2009, there were approximately 339 white kids that attended the schools with us. We were deprived of sports, any type of activities. We did not have privilege to. We were more or less alone in the schools, even though we had a few children to join us. We never rode the school bus with them. They had us. A special person would pick us up on the school bus and drive us home. We were let out of school maybe 10 minutes before the other kids got out of school to ride the bus alone. We never had a prom. We never had activities. No one was allowed to play sports because we were basically one of the first schools that truly integrated in that area. It was a tough period for us. We were deprived. Actually, I look back now and I feel like that I missed my high school years. I didn't have them. And in recent years, I've been invited to my last 3 school reunions. First one was kind of bad because the president did apologize to me for what had happened. And I knew it wasn't their fault. I knew it was the parents. And anyway, I got through it. I cried and I got through it. And then the next year, next reunion, it was a little bit easier. In the last reunion, we just celebrated 50 years. And that was a little bit tough because they talked about their prom, they talked about their activities, they talked about homecoming. And even though I was on the committee, I wanted not to go because I was still hurt. And I guess it'll always be with me because we've missed so much. And it's like I still laugh and I said, when I retire, I'm going to have my prom. I don't care if it's just me there, I am going to have my prom. And like I say, now they're pretty decent to us, the ones that I've worked with recently. And even at our last meeting when we were on our tour, one of the ladies that I went to school with, she came up and hugged me. And she said, we realized that you all had to be very brave for your parents to put you in harm's way. And she said, we apologize. And I feel, but anyway, you know what? I survived. We survived. And God has been good over the years. And I've forgiven them, but I still cry. Thank you.
Thank you.
After I graduated, I had a problem even trying to get a job. When I applied for a job at Avtex, they didn't want to hire me because they said that I was too good to work in a factory. But the union official knew my father, so he gave me a job anyway. And then I worked there for 15 years. And then after 15 years, I went back to school. I went to Lord Fairfax and graduated. And even at that point, I still could not get a job in Front Royal. I traveled to Northern Virginia, to Arlington. I got a job at the Employment Commission, through the Employment Commission at Arlington at the American Psychological Association as staff accountant. And I stayed there for 6 years. And I tried repeatedly to get a job in Front Royal, and it was always, we don't have any openings. And so after that, I went to the Department of Taxation, and I left taxation. I went to the Virginia Employment Commission. I went back to the Virginia Department of Taxation as a sales and use auditor, and then I returned to VEC. But I can't impress on how much education is. I was a single parent with 3 children to raise, and I kept going to school and trying to get all the education I can. And now I can safely say that I do have a good salary now. God has really blessed me over the years, but without that education and without that self-determination, I never would be in the place that I am today. And actually, I am 68 and a half, and I really want to work till I'm 70, because there again, life after retirement, and I want my Medicare benefits, I want my Social Security benefits, and I'm working for them. And get an education, 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 and education. I cannot impress so much on what it is to get an education, because honestly, you can't depend on anybody but God and yourself.
Amen.